So I've talked a lot about when you're living in a city, when the number of police officers is way, way below the required level to provide public safety to everybody, you're going to probably have some vigilante type justice stuff go on, right? We've been talking about that as crime continues to rise and we're not able to hire enough police officers, say in like Seattle and or Portland, because those are the two most prominent police departments right now, especially on the West Coast, that don't have enough cops, period. Don't have enough cops. We defunded our police and we've had crime skyrocket. You've got situations going on, and we've talked about this a fair amount, where citizens are going to be like, okay, I know it's not plausible to have police come. They're not able to be able to do anything. And even if they did, the prosecutors are basically just not going to prosecute. So let's literally take matters into our own hands. That's a story today that we're talking about down in Portland. It's kind of a wild one. And let's get into it. But before we do, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies here in Bellevue, Washington, just outside of Seattle. And I read news for reasonable people. You're reasonable. Let's check this out. One Portland man has recovered dozens of stolen vehicles. There's like 10,000 vehicles that were stolen in the past year, February of 2021 to February 2022, something like that. 10,000. It's like 28 cars a day on average are being stolen in Portland. And Portland is a city of about 675,000, somewhere in there. It's about 100,000 shy of Seattle's population. So, I mean, 28 cars, it's nuts. It's absolutely insane. And you'll see some of these like homeless encampment areas. There's like three main ones that I keep reading about, like Columbia and 33rd and somewhere else. And when you see video of these areas, you look at it and go, oh my gosh, it literally is. It's like West Coast, upper left USA, Mad Max territory, with just a mangled car, wreckage on the side. I mean, it's just all stripped out, just parts, just, torn off, just a shell, no tires, no rims, just, it's all wonky on its side or just, and hull after hull of those types of vehicles in these areas because they're getting stolen and stripped. And oftentimes, these thieves are just taking the car for a ride. They're just going to the next spot, dump it, move on. So one Portland man has recovered dozens of stolen vehicles. The story of a Portland man who has now recovered 62 stolen vehicles has taken another turn. This week, he was successful in returning a truck to its rightful owner, but this time there was an armed confrontation and it was caught on a surveillance camera. Let's watch that footage. What do you think?
So Nick Haas works on cars for a living, and because of the criminal crisis that's been going on in Portland, he's now taken his time to look for stolen vehicles in his spare time.
Just happened to get lucky with this one, and it fell right into our web practically.
Nick Haas first saw this souped-up, modified Ford F-250 on the stolen pages of his Facebook feed, when all of a sudden, that exact truck came into view on his surveillance cameras in his business parking lot.
Here it comes.
Watch as the confrontation involving two people with guns drawn unfolds. First, the Northeast Portland business owner approaches the man in the stolen truck at gunpoint. After a moment, the man tries to jump back into the truck to get away. Nick and his employees pull him back out and tell him they're calling the cops.
We intervened. We pulled him away from the vehicle at gunpoint and told him to kick rocks. We have his phone and his identity, and we're going to be handing that over to the authorities and making sure that justice is served.
Portland police arrived on scene. Officers recovered the man's cell phone, along with a sawzall, catalytic converters, and drug paraphernalia.
There's a few syringes, there's a few straws, several lighters. As you can see, the ignition's been punched out. He took the plates that were on the truck off and hid them inside for some reason.
This is the very common tale of stolen vehicles in Portland right now.
Addiction fuels everything. And if we can find a way to curb the addiction, we might be able to curb our crime rate in this city.
While most stolen vehicles get stripped, Nick and the police were able to return this truck intact.
They're so short-staffed. We wanted to make sure we got the vehicle back for the owner in a timely manner. Unfortunately, this is the level that it kind of needs to be executed right now to make sure this gets done and these people get handled and they get known. This isn't going to work out. This isn't a very good idea anymore for them to try this in our city.
What started out as Nick helping a friend find their stolen motorcycle has transformed into a community effort.
Now I've got people who are working with me who want to help. We're creating lists. We're dividing up neighborhoods. We're on the streets looking actively 24/7.
Even while our cameras were rolling, another car theft victim showed up at Nick's shop, seeking his help to get his car back.
So for those of you in the audio portion, you couldn't see the footage. The mechanic guy who works on cars, I assume he's a mechanic. I don't know. The car shop guy who's watching, he's looking at his security camera and he's seeing this truck there. What you don't realize is that this guy is a big bearded, and he's a pretty good sized guy. I mean, he's not a small individual. He's got this big beard. He just looks kind of mean. He just looks kind of like, okay, if you told me what to do, I'd probably listen. I might not do it, but I'd at least listen and think about it. Now, he's got a gun, and he and his sidekick pull their guns on this guy. Where I'm afraid that we're headed is that somebody else that happens to steal a vehicle might have their own gun, and then you've got a showdown. You've got literally a Western showdown. You got a gunfight in the 𝐏𝐞𝐸. That's where I am afraid we are headed. I don't think the information that this guy is saying, which is, hey, we know the police, there aren't enough of them to go around, and car theft has gotten to such a level that this is what we're doing. I don't think, you can't argue that that's not a thing, but whether or not it's safe, well, this one worked out, but maybe they won't in the future. That's my concern just from a logistics standpoint. The other thing is this guy's a car mechanic. He is not a trained officer of the law. He doesn't know, the ins and outs. He doesn't do this every day for a living. So kind of doing this vigilante stuff, it's a double-edged sword because you might get away with it and then you might not. Everybody wants to see the vigilantes because we're tired of all this nonsense, right? We are tired of crap going on. In Portland, I'm sure they're very tired of having 10,000 vehicles stolen in a year. Not a decade, a year, 28 a day. So you're going to see some more of this stuff, and it's unfortunately, there's going to be some firefights. Because these drug addicts, they've got guns too, believe it or not. And you know what? They don't even buy them at the store. They don't even register them. I know it's hard to imagine. They've got stolen guns that are unregistered. That's why one of the things I think of is you just drop a heavy, heavy jail sentence on anybody that shouldn't have a gun that ends up with one, especially if they are stolen. Because this whole going after gun manufacturers, criminals will get guns. They'll always have guns. That's just the way the world works. So when they get caught, punish the heck out of them. That's the only way I see it. Trying to reduce the number of guns or trying to reduce the capacity of magazines, that's just so ridiculous. We're going to have a lot of guns. It's America. That's our deal. But guns in the wrong hands, that's what we need to focus on. And if people know, oh, yeah, you're going to do a bunch of time. So you get those folks off the street, okay? But we're not in a position where we seem to want to do that right now. We want to just let everybody go free and be a better person next time. I'm sure you'll improve. That gun violence you had going on, you need to cut that down. So earlier today, I live streamed in downtown Seattle, kind of looking at one of the tail end of a homeless encampment sweep. And at the beginning of my live stream, just walking around with my phone, recording live, beginning of my live stream, I ran into this one individual who was trying to shoot up, and on a public street, one of the busier streets in downtown Seattle. It was the intersection of 4th and I think Pike. Just a lot of traffic, a lot of people meandering around, a lot of State Department of Transportation because they're doing a homeless encampment sweep, fair number of police officers. A street over, you got 6 more cops. But this guy had just scored whatever he'd scored drug-wise, and he was intent on shooting up about 10 feet away from me. And he couldn't get the vein in his arm to go. He was very frustrated. He threw down his belt in frustration, and he just plunked down and shot himself up in the foot. As you do. You can't find a good vein in your arm or wherever else. You go to your foot. So that's what he was doing. And across the street, there is a security guard. And the security guard yells at him from across the street, "Hey, knock that stuff off." Something like that. And I'm like, man, this is just a surreal scene. We've let things go so far that people are openly shooting up on a street in a major metropolitan city. And I know this goes on every day. And I know this is not shocking to a lot of you, but it's one of those things where we're just like, that's just Friday morning in Seattle on a major street with all of this police presence, just literally 100 feet away, less than 100 feet away. It was half a block around. And I was right in the heart of this homeless sweep. So, and you've got the security guard just yelling at him, "Stop that, stop what you're doing." And you're like, okay. So vigilante justice. Yeah, it's a thing. And I think you're going to see more of it because we don't have the bandwidth to cover all these crimes. And 10,000 vehicles, that's crazy. All right. So here's a separate approach, a non-violent separate approach to trying to minimize crime. "Please don't steal my car. I am poor. Fed up with thieves, man posts sign in window." Okay. All right. Let's hear about this one. So this is a young 20-year-old kid. Car thefts are on the rise across Portland. Just last year, the city beat its record back in 1995. These days, it's likely someone who has had their car broken into or stolen if you live in one of these cities. And I live in a city that has historically been pretty safe, Bellevue, Washington. Wealthy city. I mean, it's got its neighborhoods that are, the neighborhood I lived in before my divorce was the town of Hunts Point, and it's probably the 3rd most wealthy community in the United States, period. I mean, it's where presidents go to fundraise on the West Coast outside of LA and San Francisco. And here in Bellevue, I used to always leave my garage remote control in my car on the whatever that is. So it used to be able to leave, my garage door opener there. And now there's so many break-ins happening in cars that I don't want them to be able to break into the house and go break into, somewhere else I've got a secondary remote for. And so you can't leave stuff anywhere. So I think everybody is aware crime is on the rise in these cities. Now it's on the rise in other cities that didn't defund their police as well, because we've had just a lot of crazy stuff go on with the pandemic that I think has created a situation where there's not a lot of oversight. There's not a lot of, coverage of what's happening. And there's less ability for the police to be able to do their jobs because of numbers and just the way that police have been hamstrung over the last, decades, right? I mean, that's just the way this has gone. It's gone the wrong direction. So talking about a 20-year-old kid here, the first time was a smashed right side of the windshield with a sledgehammer, which shattered the right side, and they took out the passenger window, Austin Stevens said. Stevens lives in Northeast Portland and has unfortunately been the victim of break-ins multiple times. I think the story goes 6 times inside of 6 months, something like that, or 12 times inside of 6 months. Since moving to Northeast Portland neighborhood a little over a year ago, the car has been broken into multiple times. 2 weeks later, that's when the other window was smashed, Stevens said. Now, Stevens is trying a new tactic. Signs. He's putting signs up in his car. One saying there is nothing of value inside. All right. Okay. But what if it's dark and they can't read the sign? And those are things that jump to my mind. The other sign says, "Please don't steal my car. I'm 20 years old. I bought this car on my own and it means the world to me. I am poor." All right. As a dad, I am like, I can totally identify with that when your kids are starting out, don't have a lot of money. You want to help them out. Maybe you help them out with a car. This kid probably didn't have the parental help to be able to do that, or they are doing the tough love thing, which I totally agree with, which is, hey, figure it out on your own. That learning lesson on your own will teach you far more than me just going out and buying you a car. That's reasonable, right? That's the reasonable thing to do. But not everybody has parents who have the financial ability to, all right, you crashed that car. Here, let me get you another one. You know what I mean? And people get caught up in that. I haven't gotten caught up in that. You blew the engine again? What were you thinking? I thought you'd get me a new car. Yeah. All right. So more than that, we want to communicate that a lot of people are not people who are rolling in a lot of money. That's what this kid is saying with his signs. So the one that says, please don't steal my car. I'm 20 years old. I bought this car on my own and it means the world to me. I am poor. That's a tough one because I am afraid people are going to see that and go, don't give a, you know what, and just break the glass. I think that's how this world has gotten to. There's no compassion with people anymore on a real level. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's just move on to the next car. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I don't think so. Because drug addicts, when they are looking for their next score, they could not care less what they do. And that's what, so much of this is. They're looking to score their next hit, and they'll do anything to get that done because that, just literally drives the physical desire within their bodies. And some of these new drugs, the fentanyl, oh man, that is some rough stuff. I mean, people will literally go to endless lengths. They'll break in, tear anything apart, tear copper out of, public utility boxes. Just the ingenuity, if they just took all that energy and applied it to something constructive, but yeah, that's not going to happen. So in fact, the couple has spent thousands repairing broken windshields and broken windows. Stevens and his girlfriend have started a GoFundMe to cover the costs of the damage. They say many incidences have impacted their lives. And it's at that point in time, you kind of want to say, maybe you need to move. I mean, that is bottom line. All right. And this happens more than a few times, unless you've got a really good paying job where you can just repair that stuff. And a window might be $500, $1,000, depending on what car you have. Maybe if you've got an older school Honda, you can get a replacement window. It's going to be fairly inexpensive. Maybe you can do some of that yourself. But when you're not making a lot of money and you've got a $500 here, a $250 hit here, $1,000 hit here, and it happens multiple times, you can't recover from that. I mean, you're trying to just get by. And then you got gas going through the effing roof. Man, I paid $5.11 this morning. And I think the top, and that was regular unleaded. Supreme unleaded, I believe, was $5.69. We're going to be at $6 a gallon here in no time at all. I mean, literally like no time at all. So you've got expenses like that on top of, knuckleheads breaking into your car and just destroying your car, probably utilizing a lot of duct tape, covering up those holes until you can afford the next one. Don't even think about, doing an insurance claim because at age 20, and if you're a male, car insurance is outrageously expensive anyway. I know this because I had 2 kids and it was expensive. The older they get, the more that comes down because all that testosterone starts to drop and they actually become okay drivers-ish. I don't know. Things have to be adjusted when situations happen. That's part of life. But when it's continuous and repetitive, that's where it becomes frustrating. I think just once becomes frustrating as well. Portland's police say in the last year, they have received reports for more than 10,000 stolen cars. That's between February of 2021 and February of 2022. My guess was right. That averages out to be 861 stolen cars a month, or 28 cars stolen every single day. So people are trying these crazy approaches. And I don't blame them. I would try it too. All right, what's this going to hurt to, sit down on my computer and beep-de-dee-boop and print out a little sheet of paper, tape it. I mean, it can't hurt, right? It can't hurt. Does somebody think, oh, I wasn't going to break into that car, but now that I read their sign, F those guys. Whoosh. And you just crack the window. I don't know. I don't know what goes through their minds. It's not good. All right. I've got one more story here, and it's kind of a gruesome one, but it has a happy ending. Woman gives birth on Portland sidewalk and then leaves the child there. This is literally a story going on. A baby is in the hospital after a mother gave birth on a sidewalk in Portland and then walked away from the child. She obviously was just, giving birth by yourself alone. And if you're tweaked out, from whatever else going on, maybe she's just straight up got mental issues. She needs to be in a supported environment. She's pregnant. This is somebody really falling through the cracks. According to the Portland Police Bureau, officers and first responders received a report that a woman had given birth to a baby on the sidewalk near Southwest 13th and Market Street on Wednesday, shortly before 11 a.m. The report said the mother then began walking away, left the baby on the sidewalk. Now, from what I can piece together, it had been raining earlier in the day. It wasn't raining then. Sidewalk was wet. Not ideal conditions. And here in the Pacific Northwest, it's still pretty cold. So at 11, it's not going to be toasty. This isn't summer. This isn't even spring in the Pacific Northwest. I'm still wearing, my down coat consistently every day. Officer 𝐏𝐞𝐨𝐬𝐥𝐞 and his partner were patrolling the area in search of a serial burglar, as you do in Portland, when they got the call. It's a cold day. It wasn't raining at that moment, but it was raining earlier, and the sidewalk at Southwest 13th and Market is no place to deliver a baby alone. I can't believe she didn't get to the hospital. And that's what makes me think, okay, she's really got something going on. And how she managed to give birth by herself and then, just walk away from the child. When they arrived, the police officers, paramedics began evaluating the health of the baby. As they said the woman was stumbling away eastbound on Market with a lot of blood and amniotic fluid all over her. Well, she just gave birth. That's kind of the way it goes. Wild. Sidewalk. Again, come back to the sidewalk. Just stuff going down on the sidewalk because that's where these situations are occurring. Officers then caught up with a mother nearby, said the Portland Police Bureau. She was evaluated and placed on a police officer hold to get a mental health evaluation. She and her baby, a girl, were transported to the hospital by ambulance. Portland Police Bureau added the officers were told at the scene that the mother and the baby appeared healthy. What a rough way to start. You're an infant. You're literally just out of the womb. And it probably wasn't a good go to begin with. Those 9 months were probably a little rough. But the baby is healthy. That's crazy, right? This is literally what's going on. And this is an example to me, we dumped everybody out of our psychiatric units and let them go free because we love them so much. And we expect them to do better out in the wild than in a place where they can get the help they need or the medication they need or, the birthing center that they need. This gal's just roaming around, has a baby on her own. Now, who knows what the actual situation is? Maybe she's got a warrant out for arrest. I don't know. Any one of those circumstances. Maybe she is just crazy. It doesn't sound like she was on drugs. Because then the baby would just, go into the, where it starts to just seize up because it's not getting the stuff into its system through the mother. It doesn't sound like that was the case, but I don't know. We don't really know. Just the fact that she had a baby on the sidewalk and then just mind not in the right place, leaves the baby behind and just is stumbling around. She's just literally out of her mind, right? Like the guy kind of sitting down, shooting himself up in the foot on the sidewalk in a busy street in downtown. Just not all there. So we love people so much that we're just allowing them to live the lifestyles that they do. And this is how it goes. So we're trying to come up with ways. And by we, I mean, I think society and people are, you know what? This isn't acceptable. We're trying to come up with ways to help people, but the foundations and the basis that we used to deal with are no longer there. All right. You're crazy. You belong in a home where they can watch you. You're really, really crazy. You belong in a high-level psych ward. We just don't have a lot of that anymore. So got to figure some of this stuff out. In the meantime, this is exactly what you're going to have going on top of the whole drug epidemic and the fentanyl. And that fentanyl is just wildly out of control right now. I mean, it's so cheap and it's so powerful, and it, just kills people because it's so much stronger than heroin. So got a lot of stuff going on in Seattle. You got a lot of stuff going on in Portland. You got a lot of stuff going on in a lot of the rest of the United States. And for a lot of us, it's not reasonable. So that's why we read news for reasonable people, because we know what the difference is. And a lot of this stuff is just like, what? She had a baby on the sidewalk and then she stumbled off. Oof, that is not reasonable. Neither is having to post a sign on your car. Neither is having to saying, please don't break into me or steal me. Neither is having to, on your own with your sidekick, pull guns on a car thief who is shooting up or whatever it is, smoking up in said stolen car. None of that is reasonable. That's why we cover it here on News for Reasonable People. Thanks again for joining. We'll catch up soon. Talk then. Bye for now.